Welcome to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next. The Alumni podcast where you get to hear the inspiring stories and transformation that DVC has had to offer its alumni. And now, on with the episode. Alrighty, and we are live, and I want to welcome Tiffany Vargas here. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Tiffany Vargas, and I am a DVC alumni, and I am just really excited to get to talk about my journey and kind of give people some different ideas of the different places you can go.
Great. Well, it's a good place to start. So, did you grow up locally here in the Bay Area?
Yes and no. So I was born and lived in the Seattle area until I was about 12, and then we relocated to the Bay Area. Lived in Benicia, which is just across the bridge from DVC. So
Love Benicia.
yes,
Love
it
it. I lived there
was.
for a couple of years, so it's like, yes.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was really because I moved there in middle school. I was there for most of middle school and high school, and it truly was kind of like the all American experience with the one high school in town, one middle school. You grow up with the same kids. And then, you know, I think that Diablo Valley College was just something that was always second language to us. It was always ingrained because it was there, and a lot of people had either gone there or had siblings that had gone there, and so it was something that I was really familiar with.
So it was kind of like that was it well, and again, you can almost throw a rock from Benicia to
Yeah.
DVC. So it's just yeah. And well, you also up there in Benicia, you have the Thursday night market. My wife and I love going to, and we go visit Auntie
Mhm.
Karen up there, and it's just I we love that town. So you ended up over here at DBC, and what was that experience like? I mean, you got enrolled, and I'm sure it was like going from Benicia is kind of almost slightly more advanced than a one horse town. You got more than one traffic
Yeah.
light, which is awesome, but it's a bit, you got that kind of move to, a bigger environment. So what was that like?
Yeah, it was, Benicia, it is sheltered, because you have this bridge that separates you from the rest of the world. No, we did get out. But kind of, so I actually started, it was kind of a roundabout way. So graduated high school. My intent was to actually go to Chico State. My parents, they wound up getting a divorce. I think they announced it to us a week before I graduated high school, so that definitely tied things up um financially. So plans shifted, and it was, well, I'm going to stay home this first semester and enroll in DVC and then kind of figure out what I want to do. And so I had spent I think I it was just fall semester. Maybe I went there through spring, but I wound up moving to San Francisco then, and I actually attended the Fashion Institute for Interior Design. Um, my mom, she kind of had taken on my younger brother at that time and was having some difficulties with him. So she needed some help back home because she didn't have that support from my dad. So I wound up moving back home to help her out. And at that point, she had moved from Benicia to Martinez, which was right there next to DVC. Um,
Love Martinez.
yeah, I love that little town too. They're like sister cities. Um, love the water. And so, with everything that was going on, it kind of wasn't the right time for me, and I wound up not finishing the Fashion Institute. So I think that that is kind of a huge like ego thing. Um, almost did. So at this point, like I had all these building blocks, and it's just I speak about timing all the time because I beat myself up about that so much because it's hard to look at your peers and say, well, they're graduating now or X, Y, and Z. Like, why can't I just make this happen? And I think that when you're younger, you can't wrap your brain around how everybody has different circumstances and how that's going to affect your path or whatever. But I was always a really hard worker. So I had worked at the Elephant Bar in Concord. Well, I had originally worked at the one in Daly City, transferred to Concord, and it was amazing. They gave me so many different opportunities. Even when I would have been graduating, it would have been 2008, 2009. So right when we had the last crash. So I don't even know how well an interior design degree would have done then anyways. Um, and every time there was an opportunity to do something, I just kind of took it. They needed an admin, so I started doing that for them part-time. It turned into full-time. Um, they needed someone to decorate the stores for Christmas. It started with just our store in Daly City, and they liked it. And I wound up doing all the stores in the Bay Area for them. And then somehow that turned into a marketing opportunity where I actually wound up working in marketing for them throughout Northern California. And that was all great. And that's kind of how I got into the hospitality leg of my journey. And they actually wound up closing their doors. So that's how I shifted over to Pyramid, which was great too. Pyramid Breweries. That was fun in the Walnut Creek
Hmm.
location.
Well, it's just
Um,
well, hold on. So
yeah.
I find well, first of all, on your LinkedIn, it was like none of the elephant bar story was on there, and I find that absolutely fascinating because you started off probably at the front hostess and
Yeah.
worked your way all over. Well, yeah, I have a number of kids that worked in food services, so it's like, and I'm a believer in everybody should work in food services or retail or something like that. You
Yes.
learn a lot. Um, so it's almost like you started off as just that, elbow grease type of person, and you got yourself into marketing, and I think that's phenomenal. And uh, how did you enjoy marketing when you were at the Elephant Bar?
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, it started on they had a local store marketing program, which was really just reaching out mainly for community events, and doing the fundraiser programs and things like that. And then it just kind of morphed into something that was bigger and wound up working with corporate marketing, which was in Southern California. And then they actually had needed someone to kind of head up the Northern California pieces because they were expanding. And so I had already worked in training for them. So really I wound up writing this program for the company, and they said, "Can you do it?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" Like I was hungry and I needed money, and I really didn't have any financial support, and it was fun. So I had the time. So yeah, I wound up kind of writing what I did, which is really what started my involvement in processes and kind of business analysis. And so wrote that marketing program, transferred that into training, and then that's kind of how I morphed into the HR side of things because the training and the HR goes hand in hand, orientation, um, just learning the ins and outs of recruiting, hiring, terminations, payroll, working in all these different systems. And I when I was younger, like at that age, I definitely gravitated more towards the marketing side. Um, when I was hired at Pyramid Breweries, it was a management position, and it was heavy on the marketing part. And as you know, like having kids that were in that business, they are in the hospitality industry. You kind of wear a lot of different hats.
Hmm.
So, um, by that time when I had my son, and when I came back from my maternity leave, kind of the restaurant management marketing piece just wasn't conducive to, the schedule that I needed or wanted. Which is how I transitioned into Trader Joe's. It was a little bit more of a consistent schedule, still pretty grueling. Uh, and then we reached a point where I was able to scale back, work part-time, be with my son, and just decided, hey, this is a really good opportunity for me to go back to school. And my first thought was DVC. Well, it's not intimidating. Like, it's welcoming. It's right here. It's convenient. It's this great path to Berkeley, which was kind of the plan at the time. Um, and yeah, it was so in 2016, I went back to DVC. My son was about 3. Um, and it was great. I actually, the timing was right for me, and it felt so good to go back and have this time be successful, which is kind of why I was saying I always preach the timing of things. When things are going to happen for you, it's going to happen for you, and you can make that happen, but timing is everything. And you can't compare yourself to other people, because it doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful. If other people are doing things sooner or later, you know, I think that my biggest thing was learning to focus on myself and just being proud of myself. And once you let that happen, it turned out to be a really great experience.
Yeah, I think your story to this point illustrates it's like life is so not linear. When we're young, it's like we think we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna this, and da, 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 and, in the story I hear constantly, especially here at DVC, because I've gotten to talk to a lot of alumni at this point, and everybody's story is about how not linear it is.
Mhm.
It's like what is it? Life is what happens to you when you're making plans.
Yeah.
And well, and your story illustrates that. You went off, and for a variety of reasons, it didn't work out that you graduated from the interior design school. And which I know at the time when things happen like that, it's very disappointing and it's soul crushing. And, I'm such a failure. I can't believe it. And
Yeah.
then, 10 years later, it's kinda like, "Why was I so upset about that?" But the truth is, like, I get why it is. And it's not to minimize that, but it just is, again, life is so not linear. It's like, you know so you ended up here at DVC, and
Good.
welcome to DVC. Talk about that experience here at DVC. What was that like?
It was great. Actually, I think that, like we were saying, timing is everything. And so by waiting for the right time, it was nice to kind of just really embrace it and make that my main focus. Uh, I I still remember going back and just being, things had changed. And obviously, when I had originally started college, it was, notebooks and pens, and then it was more laptops. But I didn't care. I learned, but I like my notebook and my pen. So, that's how I hand wrote my notes. And I think it was just a really, really cool experience, because one of the things that I quickly learned was, oh, well, half my professors are teaching at Berkeley too. So I'm getting a Berkeley professor here at DVC, and I get to, and, it's not like they change their content because it's DVC. It's just, they would just go back and forth between the two. And if I think one of the coolest things was picking their brains about how do you get to Berkeley, or how do you do this, or any UC. Um and and they're so welcoming, and then even the students, just really great. I We had found out that I was pregnant with my daughter fall semester right before I was going to transfer. So the Berkeley idea kind of changed because this was pre-pandemic when Berkeley wasn't as friendly to remote learning as they might be now. um, and so then I kind of shifted my focus on CSU East Bay, but it was pretty funny to be in these courses and be with these kids who ranged from like 18 years old to uh my age, and they're just embracing the pregnant lady in their classes, and it was really welcome. I don't know, it was just a really warm feeling, and everybody was so encouraging of, you know, just really, really good memories.
Yeah. So what was your at DVC here, what was like what was the thing that really stuck with you? I mean, it's true. We have a lot of professors that do teach it at Berkeley, and they're amazing, and the education there was a gentleman who he's a renowned pediatric plastic surgeon out in the valley now, and he said DVC prepared him for Stanford Medical School. UC Berkeley did not. And I still carry that quote around. I've got to pull that quote and throw it up someplace. But it's like, again, what was your memory? I mean, how did DVC really get you ready for moving on? I mean, besides embracing the pregnant lady.
The pregnant lady, yeah. No, it was, I think the classes, they can be large, but they are smaller. So it's more personalized individual attention. You get that one-on-one interaction with your professors, which is really, really, I think, detrimental to success, especially if you are in a group where, you might be unsure about continuing your education, or it's a really safe environment. And I think, like, I loved my sociology professor, Professor Ratchford. She was amazing. I think I took 4 of her courses, and she kind of was the one that set me up to, well, you can go on to do sociology or human development, and it can break off into all these different paths. Um, so just that individualized attention, and it still is, because I had gone to like the Fashion Institute, I had been to SF State, and I think one of the cool things about DVC is that it is a big campus. So I think, especially for someone who is coming out of high school and maybe wants a college experience, I do feel like you get that on campus experience. You're not missing out on that. It's, the library, the student center. It's it really is just a cool place to be. Uh so I guess if people are worried about missing out on that quote unquote college campus experience, I do think you get that with DVC and the professors. And I do think that I don't think there was a single professor there that I took their course. And they may have not been my favorite courses because I don't like math and I had to redo my math classes because, they expire. I don't the credits, you need to re-update them. But they all truly care about the well-being of, at least for me, of their students, and they want to see them succeed, which I think is really cool.
Cool. Yeah, and that is kind of the overall arching culture here at DVC is just like you matter, you as a student, as an individual matter. So you went on from DVC, you go to Cal State East Bay,
Mhm.
and let's you go on. You're into okay. And now I'm fast forwarding a little bit because it's just some of this is like I'm going. Wait a minute, we got to chat a little bit. So so you end up as a manager at Trader Joe's, which is a terrific company. But I mean, I understand why being in retail like that, it's hard when you're trying to
Mhm.
actually have a family, and you did your HR consulting thing for a while. What was the process of getting into that?
Yeah. So that was actually kind of interesting. I left Trader Joe's Just because and it is a wonderful, wonderful company. It just wasn't my thing. And it kind of, the whole consulting piece kind of happened on its own. I'm sure like you kind of don't expect to fall into consulting, and there was, or there are a lot of businesses in Martinez and Benicia. My aunt owns a coffee shop, where they're little cafes or little restaurants, and they don't necessarily need an HR person or even an administrative person to have like continually, but they need that help getting started up. And so it just kind of worked into, or it was the connections that I previously had, like people that were venturing out and opening their own restaurants or cafes or retail spaces. And they would say, hey, I need help setting this up. These systems, you've worked with Mike Roast Toast, like, all these other things. You've been in HR. We need a general guideline of here's day one employee, like this is what you need to know, like what do I need to do to set my staff up for success type of thing. And then once they had all those tools in their toolkit, I was able to move on, and if they needed me, if they needed to update something, it just that's kind of how that client base happened. It was just and then it worked out because I was going to DVC at the same time. I actually did take a part-time serving job. Eureka in Concord had just opened up. Loved them. They were amazing. They actually wanted me to bartend because I did have bartending experience, and then they were opening a bunch of other stores, and so they had trainers in, and I helped them with training, and that was really cool to launch a store. And be a part of that, and made more connections there. So, it's a blessing and a curse to be the person that is the yes person, but like sometimes I need to know when to say no. Like this is too much. But that's how the consulting piece started, and sorry, my dog is, if you hear my dog, she's drinking her water.
Oh, that's fine.
I'm like, that's kind of a weird
This is a very organic podcast because it's just like it's got all those things in the background. People take a drink of water, and it's just all of it stays in unless something somebody has a heart attack or something. So
Yeah, we don't want that.
no. So a little bit. I find it interesting. I mean, I get the whole thing about because it's easy to say yes, and then you have to develop boundaries. Because
Mhm.
it's then you find yourself. It's like, oh my gosh, I got no time for me. Um, but I love the piece about because you develop the skill of being able to basically open a place and
Mhm.
processes. And it sounds more like you're more entrenched in process, and HR just happens to be how you manifest that, you
Mhm.
know. And then um, and so as a result, it's like people see this as your kind of your golden wand, that you can wave over a place. It's like, look, here are the things you have to do, and I get it. Also, I mean, as a small cafe and stuff like that, they're not going to be able to hire somebody to take care of their stuff that's going to keep them from getting sued.
Yeah.
So it's just it's but if they could bring somebody in once in a while, it's money well spent, especially if they have that expertise in it. So
Mhm.
you get through the consulting gig, you end up um draw the line for me. End up going to support specialist too. So I'm just well, that's the whole reason that I wanted to talk to you. Is like I'm kind of going. I love this because it's so not linear.
Yeah.
I mean, I can see a theme going as you kind of explain it, and then I'm like, okay, I kind of get that. But so you go from independent contract, consulting, and you've got this consulting firm, which I think is super awesome. I mean, it's such a need that I mean, now, many years later. there's apps that'll do a lot of it, but I don't think
Mhm.
it has that personal touch. Whereas, you can come into your aunt's coffee shop, which we'll have to talk later about where that one is because I'll go visit.
Yeah.
Um, but but the thing is that personal touch because there's a lot of stuff you can find when you know what you want to look for,
Mhm.
as opposed to the owner who they're so, they're busy, ordering donuts or ordering this or ordering that, that it's kind of tough to tell. So, what brought you to child support specialist?
Again, that's, I think it was a bit of just adapting to new circumstances. And to be completely transparent, it was that I knew that I was going to be finishing with my degree in human development, and the child support office was located in Martinez. So it's 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes from my house at the time. And I knew that working for the county or the government, your schedule was really consistent. And it was kind of one of those things where I had heard that you don't get hired right away with the government. So I said to myself, well, I'm going to start this journey now so that by the time I graduate, maybe like they will. Are you good? I know. Did the water go?
No, it's okay. We're
You're
good.
fine. I just want to make sure you didn't need a break. I had that happen to me the other day, and it's like the worst feeling. You're stuck on a meeting. um, so I'm glad you're okay. Um, but yeah, so it's and this part of the story is really actually crazy. So I applied, and I wound up getting the job, and so I started that in 2018 because I was there for 2 years, yeah. And so I was like, "Well, I don't." I still had a year of college to finish, and I had a 2-year-old at home and a kindergartner. I was like, "Well, I guess it's 5 minutes away, what do we we're gonna make it work." Um And so I took the job, and one of the things about the county is they do have a very strict probationary period for 1 year where, you gotta be minding your P's and Q's, and, you're not encouraged to take vacation time. Like, the schedule is great, but it is, you gotta prove your stuff because once you're tenured there, it's they just wanna make sure the right people are there. Um, so with those limitations and finishing my last year of my degree, actually, it was 2019 because then this lovely little thing called a pandemic happened. So I was finishing my bachelor's remotely, at East Bay, working remotely for the county, um, and they, because we were forced into it, all of a sudden, my kids are all at home, and I truly I don't know how I really don't. My husband was laid off, um, from the pandemic, and so and California is extremely expensive, and I know we had talked about earlier, kind of, well, what brought you to Las Vegas? It's not ideal being in a 1,200 square foot house on lockdown with 2 children under 6 years old, a husband who's not working and trying to work securely from your bedroom. And so at that moment, we had started looking at other options because I had told my husband that in 2021 was when we moved to Las Vegas, and I had said, I want to be in a position where if we lose an income, our children are not going to suffer, and that's just not possible in the Bay Area. Like, unfortunately, the ship has sailed for us. So my cousin lived in Las Vegas. You know, I think everyone pictures you living on the Strip, and we're actually like 30 minutes from there. So we're more northwest in Summerlin. Gorgeous area. Actually, it's where Sony and Warner Brothers, they're starting to move their studios over here. So it's just kind of a really cool place to be right now. I never thought I would enjoy the desert, but if you're in the right, I don't leave my little bubble a lot unless we're going to baseball tournaments. And so that was kind of how I got into child support and what brought me to Las Vegas in my very non-linear resume.
So, well, and yeah, and again, it's the life is what happens to us when we're and I know for just about everybody is, the pandemic uprooted almost everything, whether it was where they lived or kind of how they interacted or what they did for work. And, whole industries have gone away. I mean, there are no more toll booth workers. And
Yeah.
I know, decades ago when I was actually commuting from Pleasant Hill to Benicia over the bridge, and I had my little ticket, on a motorcycle, I had my little ticket book in my
The
pocket,
ticket books,
Well,
yes.
yeah, because
I
it's like
remember
that's
it
what you did.
too.
Yeah, and it was like that's what I did. I mean, gosh, that was, back in the early '80s,
Mhm.
and I love that job. That was and again, Benicia's awesome. But it's, no more toll booth workers, and there's a lot of industries that have just evaporated because it just, there isn't a need anymore. Um, so you end up there. Now, did you guys just like pull up your tent and like move there and just, so, uh, or did you like reconnoiter a little bit or?
Yeah, so we did. We wound up the funny thing is even though Las Vegas is so close, I mean, to California, we border each other. I had never been to Las Vegas. And so my cousin, she's in real estate, and we wound up buying a house. My husband had been to Las Vegas, but didn't see the house, didn't, it was January of 2021. And I told my husband, I said, we have got to just do it. We're not going to see these interest rates. We're not going to. Um, so it was very much, well, ironically, it was a gamble.
And I was gonna say
Yeah.
probably part of what was driving it was, you're locked into 1,200 square feet with your husband and 2 small children, which, um,
Yeah.
yeah, that would be yeah, that's like, okay, well, there's either gonna be a divorce, some sort of violent
Yeah.
crime,
Right.
or we can move. Let's make some wise choices.
Yeah. And so I actually wound up having to, because right as we bought the house was right when the county announced that they were going to have people return to work for that summer. So I wound up having to leave my job. Um, but one of the benefits of moving here was that, and like I had told my husband, I had said, I want to make sure that if something, God forbid, something like this ever happened again, like we can have one income and do this. So we, we I think a lot of people could, we could have stretched it. We could have probably bought our forever house here, which parts of me really, I do regret that we didn't at the 2.8% interest rate. Um, but here we are. So we basically we pretended like it was just my husband's income and I wasn't a factor in our budget. And so wound up putting in my notice at my job, and he said, well, you can go, you can get set up. He's like, obviously, you're resilient. Like, you see my resume. I know we're gonna figure it out. And it was actually really cool. We moved in June of 2021, and I got to have that summer with my kids and just kind of apply to different places, apply to different county jobs. I kind of always knew that that route was not always going to be for me. And then my other aunt, she is in real estate, and the real estate company that she works for, they are a startup. They're large. Like, I think they're the number one real estate company in Oregon, and they're in like the Pacific Northwest mostly. And they have a really cool business model. And the CEO, the owner, he was looking for an executive assistant and wound up interviewing, and him and his wife are just the most amazing, like, salt of the earth people. And they were opening a office in Las Vegas, and somehow it morphed into me being the executive assistant. They got a hold of the information about my HR background and my knowledge, became their HR director, worked with them. And then I was with them for 2 years, and it was, again, even though I was a salaried employee of theirs, I got them to a point where they didn't need a full-time director. And, I had always told them from day one, I said, this is your business. Like, you guys need to watch out for yourself. Like, I love you both. You're amazing people, but, like, don't sacrifice what's best for you guys in your business. Like, if you need to let go, like, I'm not going to have any hard feelings for you there. It's run its course, and I will always figure things out. So that happened where it was very sad. They were just like, you got us here, and unfortunately, we don't need you.
So and that is a sad moment. So I have a really dumb question. Did you get to offboard yourself and do your own exit interview?
Well, they had their chief of operations, and he was a part of the phone call. And I think they were just I don't think they were scared. I just think they didn't know what to expect. So he was a part of it. Was a Zoom call, actually, because they're based in Oregon, and I was traveling back and forth between them, and they wanted to expand to more the Seattle area, and I think they have. And I think how these decisions have to be made. Like, I think they were looking at a business plan, and it was, well, we want to do X, Y, and Z. And so I think they were worried that it was maybe sudden, and I wouldn't handle it well. But to answer your question, he was a part of the initial conversation. And then once that had happened, there were a few follow-up calls like, hey, how do we do this? And what do we and
I just had
I was like, here you go, here's what you do.
yeah, well, and again, it was like I just had this visual of you doing your own exit interview, and and oh, and it's I don't know if you'd be sitting at one desk and just kind of move the paperwork back and forth and move chairs or something like that, but it was just a weird visual in my head, and that's kind of the way my brain works sometimes. But
They had
Well,
done
and
a
it sounds
few layoffs, so I had made them a part of the process, so they knew how to do it. But yeah, it was interesting. Yeah, it was.
yeah, well, and yeah, it's just I've always wondered how, it's like, okay, so anyways, so now you're over here at Boyd Gaming.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
So that's pretty amazing too. I love where I am at. What happened with that was I think I was laid off the end of April of 2023. Um, Went on LinkedIn and just kind of started combing through different things that I wanted to do. I initially thought, well, maybe I'll go back into consulting, definitely have more connections now. I was working on my SHRM, studying for that, so I took time. I still need to take the exam, but I got
Okay,
hired at this new place.
what's a SHRM?
So it's a certification so it's the Society of Human Resources, and it's you basically get to put letters after your name. Um
What?
it says things. But so I think one of the coolest things about working at More, with it being a startup and having them bring on all this different tech, and I had exposure to tech prior, especially like ERP and HCM systems and setting them up and working out of all those. I'd worked in Workday before, which is huge. And I'd worked with Oracle. And so anyways, what had happened was a recruiter was looking at my background, and Boyd Gaming is actually hospitality. So it was like this perfect storm. They're casinos. So we have them all across the country, and they've actually expanded to Canada for uh like the interactive portion of our gaming. And they were in a position where they had acquired a couple of other different companies. They were working out of 3 different ERP systems, and they wanted to consolidate. They needed to select an ERP system, so an enterprise resource planning system, and their HCM, so human capital management. They needed to streamline those and really look at those processes and then select which one was going to be best for them. And they needed someone to do that. And it was interesting because they were hiring for IT. So technically, I'm in IT now. And at first, that was new to me. The tech portion of it, I've always been good with systems, and like you picked up processes. So, um, you know, the recruiter said, "Hey, I think you can do this." And I said, "Well, I don't have like an IT background." I said, "I'm very familiar with these systems. I know the processes. I know what needs to be done to start something up and like what they would need to select." And she's like, "Well, just interview, just see." She's like, "'Cause they really don't, they're not looking specifically for an IT person. They really want someone who can be a bridge between HR, know those HR processes, and bring it to the product side with IT." Um, so for And I wasn't aware of, like, all the different areas that you could go into in IT. I mean, I knew that there was a lot of them, but I wound up going into the product side because that was the side where they were selecting, um, this new ERP system, and they wound up hiring me as a contractor. So I I wasn't too sure about that, and when I was talking it out with my husband, he said, "Well, just try it." And I said, "I don't even know." I said, "IT? Like, I just." He's like, "Well, you've figured everything else out. Like, why wouldn't you try this?" And so I was like, all right, shoot, like I'll do it. And it was pretty great. So I think I started, it was the beginning of June, and there was going to be 90 days as a contractor. And then I think I hit my 90th day and they brought me on full time as their employee. Uh, and I had actually worked before we selected the ERP project. They had needed to upgrade a bunch of other HR platforms. Wound up helping them with that. So like our applicant tracking system, there's our security and background system. I helped them implement that. I had worked in benefits prior, so we had switched over like our HSA, FSA benefits partners. And then while all that was going on, we did select our ERP, which was Workday. And Workday by far was huge. We have about 19,000 team members that we were bringing everybody together. So we did bring in a consulting firm, PwC. So that was the first time that I was with a company that was large enough where we got to work with these consultants and get to see that side of it and just really scope everything out. Our timeline was very aggressive. It was 9 months, and usually projects like these can take a year and a half, 2 years. Uh, and we went live on March 28th, and then we're actually finishing hypercare next week. And we've, knock on wood, we've pretty much hit all of our deadlines. There's always kinks you got to work out, like in the end. But it's been a really awesome team to be with. And one of the cool things is when I started, when they hired me, I was on the product side. And then about a year ago, actually, that was really scary because there was some layoffs, and I was like, "Oh God." And it was like April. And I said, "Oh no, I can't." Well, they actually wound up moving me over to a different team, which is the business application support side. And at first I didn't, the move made me nervous. But now I'm fully embracing it because now that we're live with Workday and now that we have all these new systems, I'm on the support side, so I got to kind of kick all this stuff off, and now I'm learning how to support it and carry it on. And my manager now, she's just amazing in my team, and the mentor that she set me up with, where I had all these fears that I wasn't going to succeed in IT, like they're really making it happen for me. So it's a really cool company. It's been a really cool experience, and that's where I am today.
Yay!
Yay!
So so you mentioned so talk a little bit about how you use LinkedIn, because the thing is I mean, I do bump into people that are really good at it.
Mhm.
Surprise, surprise, they tend to be HR people or recruiters. Big shocker. That was sarcasm, by the way, just for anybody not watching. Um, well, but the thing is, and I think I mentioned before we started one of the things that just I have a pet peeve about not keeping stuff at least fairly current on your LinkedIn. If you're going to use it as a tool, use it. When
Mhm.
people have like 16 connections and they're posting job updates and stuff, and it's like, who are you talking to?
Yeah, right.
That's yeah, it's just like none of those folks that you're connected to are saying anything. But talk a little bit about like how have you evolved? Because so by the way, just in case you didn't notice, the arc of your story is you started off, seating people as a hostess at Elephant Bar, and now you're working for this amazing company. Um, you know, and again, it's like I'm sure you never saw that coming. It's just like none of us do.
Yeah.
But uh, uh, talk a little bit about how you've used LinkedIn over the years, because obviously as an HR professional, you're going to pay attention to what's on there for people that you're bringing in or onboarding or stuff like that. But what is your HR or what is your LinkedIn usage look like?
Yeah, I wish it's always been when there's been these gaps, especially in between different positions. I'm always like, I'm really going to embrace my LinkedIn, and I'm really going to. And then thankfully for me, and I'm so blessed, there's usually not long enough of a gap to, I see all these people that do all the different posting, and I see how you've created this podcast, and I love watching all, and I'm like, man, I would really like to get into that side of it. I really built up my LinkedIn mainly through recruiting, mainly through new businesses opening up. And I think LinkedIn was really new even when I was at Pyramid. So I want to say I didn't even sign up for it until like 2011, 2012. I mean, it had been around, but it was starting to morph into something that people were really embracing as a tool. Picked up on that. And then I don't use it as a social media platform the way that some people do. It really is networking and using it for colleagues and recruiting. And so I don't know. I guess I just it's like that stone that just rolls down the hill, and there's just like the moss just
Just because moss goes flying off, and because it's
yeah,
like,
you just keep
well,
this. I mean, and I do keep it updated. I think that there are a few. I would like to keep it more updated. There's a couple tips and tricks that I think, especially working in IT and really learning the different sides of like applicant tracking systems and how they connect to one another. Now LinkedIn really just cares about your keywords and how you're tagging them, like in your work history. So, and recruiters are moving through things so fast that you really have to know how to edit that down. AI has really changed the format of it and how it connects to these applicant tracking systems like Workday. So I think right now I am really more or less looking at how it's evolved. I mean, I have my connections. I still keep connecting with people. And one of the things that I do think is important, like you say, is at the very least, tag your accomplishments in that work history so that you're searchable and, make those connections. And I think that, and I now that we've finished this Workday project, I really have to get on there and start writing my recommendations for like even the PwC people and the different contractors that I worked for, because building those connections is what is going to help you if you do need to find another job, or if unfortunately you're laid off. Like, I think people think it's as simple as, like you said, just making a post like, hey, I need a job, and everybody's just going to come to me. And no, it's really like hitting the pavement and reaching out to individuals. And so I think that first and foremost, it's important to not burn bridges and build good relationships. Like, you don't always have to like everyone, but you gotta.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you gotta.
I work with a lot of people, and over the years, and I don't always like all of them, but I'll work with them
I'll work with
and
them.
be
Yeah.
rude. So it's just, yeah, yeah. Well, I think one of the things that the important part of it is because LinkedIn's algorithm is always changing, and right now I'm always in the middle of trying to figure out what the thing is to get, because I'm looking for engagement with the alumni association of my LinkedIn. But for one of the things I think is important that you brought up is it's the continuing nurturing of those connections that you've invested time in. So like, for instance, you have all these people that you've just recently connected with, and see now I'm looking at, I think about mine. I'm like, oh, I got to get out there, and I'll have the summer to be doing some of that stuff. So we'll be connecting, or we're already connected. But to your point, it's about the working the connections, and it's like making them fresh, and it's like reminding them that you're out there and stuff like that. And that is often what recruiters do is on a regular basis is they go out there and they're very intentional about what they do with their LinkedIn. And it sounds like, well, I mean, it sounds like you've almost intuitively known what to do with it. Um, so if you had to go back, I didn't tell you about this part. So this is the tough question. So if you had to go back and give your younger self piece of advice, what do you think it would be?
Don't be so hard on yourself. Like, I think I wouldn't say that I'm a controlling person, but y- y- you're not gonna figure out how things are gonna unravel. So just enjoy the ride. There might be parts of it you don't like. Make the best of it, but you'll get there and take. If you want big rewards, you got to take big risks. Like it's not gonna happen for you if you don't just get up and do it. Like I could have stayed at Trader Joe's and had probably a great career. I don't think I would have been fulfilled, so took pay cuts and went to DVC and, maybe some people had their opinions about that, but I'm totally fine with how it worked out and I love where I'm at. And that wouldn't have happened if I didn't stop being hard on myself and if I just didn't accept the ride. So,
Oh my goodness. I think that's a phenomenal. Well, and you're the first person I've asked that question of that answered it immediately with an answer that. So I'm actually very impressed because usually people go, I don't know. And it's just like, I agree. I mean, that was a hard lesson for me to learn is just,
mhm,
it's gonna be what it is,
mhm.
and it's just, put the little bar down for the ride, the little restrainer bar that keeps you in the ride so you don't fly out.
Hang on.
And well, and the thing is, I tell people all the time, it's just like, "Oh, this sucks." It's like, "Yeah, but I've survived 100% of the disasters I've had up to this day."
Yeah.
So, it's like, my success rate so far has been pretty good. But, well, cool. Well, I think we'll end there. This has been fantastic. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
Yeah.
Hang on a second. When we're done, we'll just wrap it up. But again, I wanna thank you so much for coming on. It's been very insightful, and it's I get why it is you moved to Vegas. It's like, not because Vegas is the most awesome, because it's just like, yeah, all right, we gotta, especially being locked in a box with a bunch of people that, yes, I love them, but right now I'm not sure I like them.
Right.
Which is you get like a toddler and a 5 or 6-year-old, clanking around, and it's like it can be pretty tough.
Mhm.
So, all right, well, we will end it here, and, and this will be out in a few weeks, I think, and, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, and we'll stay connected on LinkedIn and whoever gets to see
Absolutely.
this, don't be afraid to follow me.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to DVC Alumni, where every story inspires the next, the podcast for the DVC Alumni Association. You can contact us at alumni@dvc.edu with any comments, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe to our podcast.